Welcome! This is ProductCamp Conversations, a podcast for curious product people, hosted by Allison and Dave. Each week, they think out loud with a rotating guest about the parts of product that don't fit on a roadmap, community, the human element, and the hallway conversations. Be sure to like and subscribe so you get new episodes every week. Give some extra love providing a review wherever you're listening. It helps other product people find us. Now, let's get into today's show.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Product Camp Conversations. My name is Allison Herbert, and I am excited today. We've got another guest in the studio, Marion Cholieu. Marion, how are you?
Pretty good. I'm excited for this. Thank you for having me.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to have you in the studio with us today talking. I'd love you to tell us a little bit about yourself. You're in product and what's got your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in product for about 5 years. Kind of started, obviously, I don't think anyone's path to product is linear. So I started as a project manager and went to operations and made my way into product. But I currently live in Arkansas. I lived in Arizona for a little bit, and I'm originally from France. So outside of work, you'll probably find me on my mountain bike. But currently, professionally, I'm a product manager at Industrial Defender. It's a company that builds cybersecurity software that helps protect critical infrastructure, like energy or utilities. So the product I'm working on right now helps customers understand what assets they have in their industrial environment and how they can keep them secure and compliant. It's a huge compliance part to the job I do today. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
That is a very interesting path and not a straight one, as you said. So, what got you curious about product?
Um, that's actually a pretty interesting story because I was working for DoorDash corporate on the merchant services side, and so I went through different roles there. And my last role was so my team was in charge of setting up, the little promotions that you see on the DoorDash app. And just in order to implement this, we had an internal tool built by a product team and an engineering team that was our partner team. However, even if you would think my team would be the first, main stakeholder to that because we were the team that used that on a day to day. We were not included in, the new release of the tool. And so the new tool came out and no one knew how to use it. It was a bit of a mess. And that was kind of, from that problem, this is what got me interested in product because I got closer to that team and tried to understand, okay, and share what our problems were and how to improve the tool. So I kind of started on the other side as a stakeholder, and then I saw a job offer for a small startup called Quick. That was kind of similar, kind of B2B2C, and I read through it. I've never worked in product before, and I read through it. I was like, I think I can do it. And I applied. I went through the product exercise, and then I got the job. And so that's what got me started into product.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like curiosity maybe showed up early for you. And I love that I think I can do that. I need to channel some of that sometimes, especially nowadays with everything we've got going on with AI I think I can do that. Opens a lot of doors when you have that kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, that story, and even now that you're in the critical infrastructure side with cybersecurity area. I was at U.S. Bank had a product team in the in the identity and access management within the company, and so certainly can appreciate all the different perspectives and lots of governance, lots of those things that you're facing, I'm sure, day to day.
Yeah. There's a huge compliance aspect, and everything is pretty much moving towards like a more risk based rationale instead of just a compliance checklist. So it's really interesting. It's a very niche industry, and it's very interesting to. I'm obviously very new to it, so I'm learning a lot. Like you said, yeah, curiosity I think is one of the main drivers there, and I just got into it, and it's kind of like you say, you don't have to have the perfect plan to start. And so I started somewhere and I'm learning, more and more every day. And it's actually pretty fascinating industry because there's a lot of legacy systems, but there's also a lot going on with AI, even in these type of environments. That is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think of the models nowadays and a lot of holding back things to be, and for critical infrastructure, for other areas worried about, having the most up to date models first, have things patched and protected as much as possible prior to getting those wide out in the world with the extra power that they do have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's where AI is really, it's a really good use case because when we think of things like, figuring out attack paths and making sure assets are secure, that's, where you can go and have AI crunch the data and, figure out how to best keep your assets secure.
So it sounds like you also had, right, a shift, and you kind of highlighted this in your story, but the shift from B to C to a
Hmm.
deeply technical B2B. Most folks don't walk across that bridge very often. You get stuck in one or the other, or, right? Just being curious won't get you all the way across that path. Is there, something specific that nobody warned you about that you learned along the way, or something that, right, really helped you cross that bridge from consumer to B2B?
So I think the main, your product brain remains, things like curiosity, customer conversations, those are the same. But it's kind of I think going from B2C to B2B is the main shift, because I worked, at Quick and Gen Digital. We were focused on, cart conversion, engagement, speed, cross sell, upsells, those kind of metrics. In the OT cybersecurity world, it's first of all, it's a very niche, like I said, so there's fewer customers, so it's a very long sales cycle, and we care about things that are completely different, reliability, trust, accuracy, and things like downtime, for example, matters a lot to our customers because obviously, if you're running a huge electrical plant, you can't have the software down and the plant down for 2 days while you upgrade, and you patch your software. So it's a different mindset. But yeah, the PM framework stays the same. It's the kind of like the definition of value that changes along the way.
Yeah. And the urgency place shifts, right? When you're consumer facing, we have to have things on the shelves for customers, or things that don't hold the customer back from making a purchase. Whereas you all are thinking about keeping the lights on all the time, or keeping systems uptime, right? Uptime is the thing to chase rather than conversion or something of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and
Great
things
call
like
out.
backwards compatibility, for example, is also super, super important. So making sure that, as we move forward, we keep updating our solution, but we also need to make sure all of the legacy solutions that we've had in the past are also compatible, so our customers don't end up, with downtime.
Yeah. Good call out there. We could talk career stuff forever, I bet. But we'll shift it a little bit because you and I actually met earlier this year at Product Camp Phoenix.
Mhm.
And I know you are not, as you said, in Phoenix or Arizona any longer, but I'd love to hear more about your experience with the product community, or what got you started with working with the product community.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a really good story there actually because, so there's a few other startup founders that I'm friends with, and we kind of started thinking about, oh, there's a huge product community, especially around Tempe area, that there's so many companies and product people, and there's no place, or this community doesn't have a space to meet, and there's nothing really happening. So we kind of noticed that gap, and we started organizing quarterly product meetings. And obviously, I was, I think we started with there was 4 of us, and then it went down to 2. I was like, when it comes to, like, following through and, like, "Okay, we're actually doing this," like, not everyone's like, "Okay, I'm in." But I kinda ended up taking the lead on a lot of these and, setting up some of the speakers and I was trying to find the right format. And what we try to do is have, obviously some industry and product conversations and some kind of presentation that had value, whether it was a panel or, I had one of my former CTOs at Quick show up and give a talk about, kind of the engineering product relationships and then what makes it work, et cetera. And then we'd have some informal time and, some happy hour where everyone would connect. So that's what we did for about a year and a half. And then at that point, Phil Marzoff, who is originally, the person that initiated Product Camp in Phoenix, he contacted me and he's like, "Hey, I think we have similar goals. Like, do you want to, you know, be associated with it in some form?" And so we kind of went back and forth, and where we landed was that, okay, it's very similar, and it's kind of silly to have two different organizations. So what we did is merge, my product meetups with Product Camp, and I think the goal is going to use those product meetups that happen quarterly to kind of ramp up, and then all the way to the big event, which would be Product Camp Phoenix 2027. So I know I'm not there anymore,
Yeah.
but I'll try to stay involved in some way because it's really near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I could echo that as well. I was so excited. I used to work for a company out in Phoenix, and there is a really decent community out there in terms of just volume of people that are doing product work. And to your point, once a year is not enough. Dave, I think you probably would agree with that. Once a year to just come together and talk with people in the community is not enough.
Yeah, that is always the challenge of product camps, right? Austin is the only one that has a regular like 2 full product camps a year, even like the big events. I would love to see more places try to do that second event a year. But to your point, having at least quarterly or like whether a separate organization is sort of going to pick up those in between. Some communities just do that, and that's sort of the partnership model some communities will do. But I think it'd be great to see more product camps take on a little bit more. Do, plus, I like to travel, and so hey, more product camps makes it easier to travel and go to a product camp, right? So
We use that as code excuse to go travel. I've got to go to this conference.
yeah.
Mhm. It's really good.
And
Yes.
before doing this first product camp, Marion, did you ever go to another product camp? Did you go to another city and try one out beforehand, or was it did anyone on the organizing crew, or is it just sort of like, hey, I know you chatted with some folks that had organized product camps in other places, but tell me more leading up to it.
So me personally, no, I have never heard of Product Camp until Phil reached out to me, and then I went down the rabbit hole and then looked at all of the different cities and looked at the concept, and I was like, this is awesome, this is great, because I think the only somewhat product related conference I've been to was a PMM summit, so product marketing, which is a little bit different. I really liked it, but it was mostly just presentation, and it was not there wasn't a lot of interaction between the attendees and the people presenting, and I always liked this kind of community driven event, and I was all in, from the get go, even if it was a first for me.
Awesome. What did you like after the event was done? What was the one thing that you were like, you're probably going to remember forever? And what's the one thing that you wish you would have done that you're like, hey, we need to do this next year?
um I was gonna say outside of people getting stuck in an elevator, which is a fun story
Just
too.
waiting for
And
her.
Allison, you were in there. Uh, I think that showed us, how resilient people can be, because that could have been a nightmare, and people are just laughing in there, talking about product, taking videos and photos, and we had to move the schedule around a little bit, but everyone ended up being,
We we moved the
super
conference
open
because of the
about it.
elevator. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
the amount of just the resiliency of the community, and it's like that's what happens when we all come together, and we're all here for the same reason, and we want to learn and interact and build community. And I thought it was a great, even it was like a you know, funny detail, I would say, but it shows you how committed people are, and how they just have fun along the way. They're not nothing really serious, even if we obviously talk about serious topics during those presentations. But yeah, I really I think overall the after the day I was just blown away with everyone's engagement and how everything went, and people were super happy about it, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is a real proof of what happens when I don't think we were it was a super big group of people that were part of their organizing team, but I don't know, everything ended up kind of just falling into place, I would say. And I think it was a good feeling.
Yeah, that's a good testament to the quality of your volunteer group too. So if you've got a
Yes.
good core group of folks that are
Hmm.
thinking it through, you obviously had Phil's guidance. He'd done this before, so he had
Hmm.
some don't do this parts to kind of watch out and figure out. But I can't echo enough how much fun it was to watch a very first one get stood up. I've been to others and just seeing right that true essence of people coming together in community from a practitioner level and right, hey, I also have that happen at my work, and here's what I've done in the past when this comes up, or here's an idea that we're all really scared about, uh, AI, and how we're going to talk about it and get through it together. And then it's less scary or it's less
Hmm.
cumbersome than when you have to go back to your desk and say, what did I do? What did I learn? How did I, put this into practice? So that's a great call out. Something you were saying earlier around standing up that first community, and I know you were, I don't want to misquote the organization, but you were working independently with the community. Was that just like, hey, I'm going to start a meetup and everybody let's go to the coffee shop on a specific day? Or did you have something in mind when you were trying to stand up the group of folks in Tempe or Phoenix that were trying to meet? Was there anything that you were looking for specifically?
I think I was mostly trying to keep it informal and fun with, some learning along, during the event. And thankfully, my company, I was working at Gen Digital at the time, and we had community room that we could rent out for free, from the building management. And that room was great because we could, bring in food that we'd cater and have set up for presenters, and pretty much use that room to have that happy hour event. And so we would gather there. We also tried, I think it was one of the Tempe's community rooms as well. That was on the north side of Tempe. But yeah, I think once we had pretty much the location nailed down, I would try to rotate the content and just kind of let people do the rest. Who shows up, and then what happens. Like depending on what people want to talk about. And we ended up building a core group that was pretty engaged. It wasn't just hey, someone's presenting and then people are just waiting. Like people would interject and ask questions, and it was really good to see that.
Sounds like you were even maybe doing a little bit of camp work ahead of time because it shows up and see what happens is the energy that we give at product camp. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's fantastic.
What was the hardest thing of putting together that first product camp for you and the team?
Um, that is a really good question. I mean, one thing I was nervous about was, are we going to have enough people proposing topics, because it was the first one, obviously, and people might not be familiar with it. And the other, worry was, are enough people going to show up? And they did. I think the way we did it, we buffered, and we had a lot more people signed up, but we ended up with pretty the right amount of people for our first iteration of it. So I think kind of calculating, how many people, and then, you know, what are we what do we need to bring for food, and, what are we doing, more of the logistical aspect, I would say. But I think our group of volunteers, we divided and conquered, and it showed. It was perfect.
You guys really lucked out with that. The math worked too. I think even right. I know Dave, you've been to larger camps where it's hundreds of people. Or what was the one you went to earlier this year with it's an all day thing?
Uh,
They're all day things, but
yeah,
you were like hundreds of sessions, Marion.
but that's a
Hundreds
mini
of
bar. Yeah, that was a couple of like I think that was like
hundreds
50.
of
Yeah,
sessions.
200. They had like 200 sessions, and that's like
Yeah.
and so there's like 20 sessions plus at a time. So you think of like just even choosing. It's like, how do you organize people into the right rooms, because the rooms are all the way from like 300-400 people to the smaller, like a 20-person room, right? So that's always one of the challenges too, as you scale up these product camps, and like, hey, how are you optimize things so that it's the best benefit, and also keeping people's energy throughout the day. I think the thing that oftentimes And different product camps try to do this in a different way. I'd love to hear how you did this. Is like you're talking about. This is really about community and bringing people together. And I think there's so much way focus sometimes on the sessions and like that part of the event, but like on the networking and how to really connect people, make new connections, strengthen old ones. What did you and the organizing team do around that to try to make that a success?
Um, so I wasn't necessarily in charge of the, scheduling. But if I remember, I think we planned buffers around the sessions, and I think like lunch, for example, is a great example. And we had the luck to be hosted by Arizona State University, and their buildings are amazing, and they were it was great for just getting together. I mean, because I think we were eating lunch outside, and in all of these different tables, like you could see like different groups of people just interacting together. So I think the place was very good for in terms of connecting people, and then I think the fact that we didn't have too many sessions, I think made it easier because I think we had maybe bigger groups that if we had more session, like fewer people would have shown up and maybe wouldn't have created those synergies between, uh, I would say quorum, like enough people to interact and have like, quality content and questions and back and forth. So yeah, I think the format I think we tried to keep it simple, obviously, because it was the first one. But I think that worked out really well.
Nice. And of course, the elevator just became another networking opportunity, right?
It
For
was
Exactly.
those
another
that it. So
networking opportunity. I do think that that's something that a smaller product camp does. That's actually a feature. So, like we were just talking about the larger size events that, right, the longer tenured ones that have run, you get an opportunity to be one on one with somebody, or even the person that's presenting. As
Hmm.
somebody who spoke at Product Camp Phoenix, I was really excited and nervous to do that. I had been to several other camps where it's a much more competitive field because there's lots more folks speaking or pitching to speak. And I really got a chance to connect with several of the other session speakers and still speaking with them today. So I think, like, from a speaker perspective, to have that level of connection, and then as an attendee also I've made new connections with folks just from, we were both in the same session together. Oh, hey, when we both went to this, activity and went through this. I know Patrick had the Lego play thing was another exciting piece that they got to do in that in the at the camp that I actually connected with him afterwards because we had conflicting times, and I was like, I can't stay for the whole time, and I want to do this exercise. So it got me curious about something else I could do moving forward. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
I
What
think I would
if you
say,
could bring? Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I think we're overlapped. Yeah, one thing I would say about the smaller size, it's yeah, maybe fewer connections, but more in depth. And I know for me,
Hmm.
I'm an introvert, so I do a lot better with like one to one or one to few, as opposed to being in the large room with a lot of people. That kind of drains me. So I really appreciated the fact that we could talk in small committees and get to know people a little bit more personally. I think it was a good setting.
Yeah. Also sets up for a longer, potentially a longer relationship networking wise. So
Hmm.
even if you're just going to, hey, we both went through this experience together, we both had a talk. But if you have a few fleeting minutes with somebody, it's less of a memory. Whereas we sat and had several sessions together, got
Hmm.
stuck in an elevator together, all those lovely things. You can have those experiences that last and outlast the event itself. So that's fantastic. I was going to ask you another question. So I know you're not in Arizona anymore. If you had one piece of advice, and I don't know if this is something you're thinking about for where you are today in Arkansas, like what's the community like there? Or like what would you want to bring to Arkansas if you were going to have something like a camp there?
Actually, I've been thinking about bringing Product Camp to Northwest Arkansas because, I mean, first of all, it's a great place to be, I think, and people don't know about it, and it is kind of a hidden gem. And there's a lot of tech people. There's a lot of things happening here. People think, oh, Arkansas, there's nothing. It's like just countryside. There's nothing there, but we have events. Like I go to an event called Tech and Tacos every month, and it's at this really cool brewery. And you go in and you pay $10 for a beer and a taco, and they have rotating speakers, and one is always like one that is more focused back on community. Like Women of Oz is a huge women-led mountain biking group that does coaching and does a lot in the community, and another talk that is a lot more focused on tech, so data, AI, everything that we would talk about at a product camp, for example. And there's a lot of incubators. There's a lot of grants that are given to entrepreneurs, new apps that come out of here. And I think obviously it's Walmart land. There's a lot of people that come here and work at the Walmart campus. I think there's enough people that are in product that would benefit from having a product camp in Arkansas, because the community is also great here. It's a very tight knit community. I don't think there's like a main product event that would be comparable. So I think there's also probably a gap here that we could fill with, potentially a product camp conference.
There's that curiosity showing up again.
Nice.
I'd be there. I'd be there for tech and tacos. That's for sure. You get me in the airplane or the car to come and see that event. So
Yeah, those are
Nice.
fantastic, and it's the moderator is a guy that works for the Chamber of Commerce, and so he brings really good perspectives, and like how everything ties together is really nice. And same thing. People hang out afterwards, or around a couple drinks, and they have a huge patio outside. That's very, it's a great place to be as well. So
Cool. One of the questions I was going to ask too, just following on with the product camp side, is how much of the effort when you're thinking about, because like you're talking about trying to get sessions put forward, but also trying to get attendees, how much of the effort or was focusing on like, okay, let's get people with product in their title, product manager, product owners, kind of that type of role, versus designer, engineer, other folks that are on product teams generally. Did you have any conscious discussion around that? If so, like what was that focus, and did it turn out as expected?
yeah, that's a great question. I think our team tried to balance it out. For the Phoenix one in particular, we had a lot of students that would sign up for the sessions, and so I think at first we didn't open registrations right away. We opened a wait list, and from the wait list we kind of sorted, kind of prioritize the product professionals, and then try to pepper here and there students, design professionals, and other people working in the tech space. So we would have a good quorum of product people, because that's the main type of attendee that we would want at these conferences. But yeah, I think the main point was, we don't want to get too many students and not enough product people, because then we'd still have conversations, but I think the value is to exchange on, professional experience and experiences. And if you haven't had those experiences yet, there's only so much you can share.
Yeah, it's always what that balance is. You certainly want to try to bring the next generation of folks along, but also if it's just that, or, and so just like having so many consultants or so many things, like
hmm
overwhelming from a racial perspective is always a challenge. So cool.
the industry in the area too. I know we were just talking about Northwest Arkansas. Walmart would be like the lion's share if you were to turn up and put an event. So how would you, right, kind of cross pollinate and right find community folks and business folks to come and still be relevant for the event as well. We have a similar problem here in Richmond. We have several large employers, but you've been in one or the other, and that's probably 80% of the tech and product community here. And so it's always hard to. It's not their event; it's the community's event. And how do you right? Yes, they may be sponsoring or hosting, or they have a lot of those resources. I'm sure Walmart has a lovely campus and would host graciously. Capital One is here, and so they do that a lot as well, but it's not their show, it's the community show, and so how do you balance that? Because, right, that's the ultimate goal that we're after. That's a great call out.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Alright. Yeah.
Cool. One thing I'm going to ask, just one last question on the product camp side, because I have seen mixed in different product camp communities, and I'm just curious in Arizona, and I've been to Arizona, but it's just not knowledgeable on this. Is how much of it was really digital, sort of software type product folks, or was it there a good mix of also some service and some physical product type managers?
Mm, I think most of them were digital, but a few of them, if I remember, one presenter, I can't remember his name. He talked about, he worked on these RFID scanners in stores, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think mostly digital, but it was not just digital, which I think gave good perspective during the conversations. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, at least, yeah, it's always a mix. And I've spoken a lot of the different product camps, and it's a question that I've asked a lot of other rooms of like, hey, how many folks work in digital versus physical versus service? And some areas are like 90, almost 100% that are digital. Some product camps, Portland, Vancouver, like some of these areas. Austin is like that. But then like St. Louis and Chicago and Minneapolis and the other ones like that, there's much more of a sort of a mix of those things. So I wasn't sure on the Arizona side.
Dave, you've got me curious now. Just thinking about that mix, do you think I'm going to say physical product management versus digital product management? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question because I have a bias here that I don't want to introduce into the podcast. Do you think they benefit the same from a product camp? Like, right, a product camp is like we were talking earlier.
Mhm.
Product brain is product brain. To Marion's point, like those skills transfer. It might change what you measure and what you care about. But do you think that's the only difference between those two?
I mean, it's sort of like B2B and B2C, right? Like you're
Mhm.
going to have different things when you get to B2B, right? You have your buyer personas, your user personas, not just your really user personas when you think of a B2C. And obviously there's much different things, just like highly regulated industries versus non-highly regulated, right? Like there's just sort of differences that change the dynamics, and like a highly regulated industry and a B2B industry and physical products industry, they're all sort of like longer cycles, longer sales cycles, like more compliance and risk mitigation,
Mhm.
all factors in a lot higher. And just where like to your point, Marianne, like where you're at your current place, your mind is thinking a lot more on the compliance and other sides of things, I'm sure, than it would have been, at your previous place before this. And so naturally, just like what topics might resonate and like what pace of things, and like moving fast isn't always good, and just like because of certain industries, like intentionally you don't want to move at that speed.
Hmm.
That's very disruptive to the customer, and would not make them feel very good with it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you scratched the curiosity brain, Marion. You just got to see how Dave and I usually do this podcast. As I'm looking and thinking around. And what do you mean, Dave? Tell me more. I want to jump back to your career story for a little bit, but not in a way that you might expect. So I heard you mention mountain biking. We've talked mountain biking before. I also heard mentioned France. Are there pieces of your maybe just personal career that have been woven in or that help keep you curious about product? I know we're in a very difficult season in general in product, and so that balance of, making sure you can show up each day with the same effort and or, intention in your work, but giving yourself those downtimes or, hey, I do this to keep me from being, burnout in my job or frustrated when we have a longer stretch of work, things of that nature. I'm being generic and intentionally, but if there's something in your personal life that helps you kind of balance that, I'd love to hear about that.
So I think I can look at it in two different ways. Like I think when it comes to the workload, obviously, I try to move as much as possible. The cool part about working from home is that I can just, the trail is right out my front door, so I can just hop on my bike or even go do a lunch loop. It's really convenient. You don't have to drive. There's very low barrier to entry, right? And the second piece is when it comes to the product work itself, I think there's obviously topics that catch my curiosity. Like right now, we're talking about localizing certain pieces of state data that we receive for assets because we have customers in Europe and in the Middle East. And obviously everything that revolves around languages interests me because I think it's fascinating. It's not just translating things, but you have to localize it so it feels native and it doesn't look like, oh, this was translated from English, I can tell. So yes, certain things that I am interested in personally, I think are reflected in my work. And I think that gives me a little bit more energy to push through, even if, I had a long week, but I know I'm going to be working on this topic that really interests me personally. And I think that's really nice to have instead of, feeling like you have to, you show up to work every day with, more or less energy, I would say, and then you have to just deal with it. But if it's a topic that, is close to you, I think it's always better.
Carries you a bit further when you've got "This got me curious," or, "I know how this
Mhm.
fits in the end game or elsewhere." Like, if I place this in the wild, I know that somebody that doesn't speak English or somebody that's familiar with this in their community will understand it. That's a good call out.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you feed your curiosity on outside of work, or is it in the sense of more information, other, maybe it's totally tend like different types of topics and may not be directly related to work, but there may be some tangents.
I think I'm a problem solver at heart, and I like to, noodle on things. So I think anything related to, you know, product methodology, it's something that really interests me because I really like to see and understand how other people approach it, and what are the different methodologies. And I also have my PMI, so then I can kind of compare that to project management, and I think both are really useful in the product work. But I think I think for me, some of my hobbies, obviously like mountain biking, I use that as an outlet. And when I write, sometimes I just want to, empty my brain, not think about anything. But some other times I just, I'm out there riding my bike and I just think about things and it helps me process. So I think it's a good helper and a good outlet to, process things, inside and outside of work. And it keeps you, keeps you motivated.
Yeah, definitely some way to get outside and have some physical activity is so important, I think, for everybody, whatever that is, those two things, and maybe they're together, maybe it's just, maybe they're separate, but
Hmm.
I love that
Yeah.
too with the idea of you're still ruminating or thinking through something from work. Not to say that you need to take that home with you. You're at home in a remote setting, but right to
Hmm.
go do a lap on the bike to kind of let me change my scenery and see if I can see the problem differently or think about it differently. Every time I have gotten up and walked away, it helps, especially if I'm whether it's writing or problem
Hmm.
solving or thinking about research, things of that nature. It's always helped.
Yeah,
have
and I
you
think
tried ever oh, God.
sorry, I just gonna add one thing is that I think like I'm very, committed to my work. Like I want to do a good job, whatever position I'm in. And I think oftentimes I find myself in that situation where I'm like, okay, I'm like have to stay in front of my computer for 8 hours because, that's my work time. And one of my previous bosses, he told me one thing that stuck with me. It's like he said, thinking is working. And so even if you're in a grocery store, running errands, or if you're outside riding your bike and you're thinking about, problems that you'd like to solve and like how to approach them differently, like that's work. Like, and then I tell myself, hey, you don't have to, stay seated on your chair because it might be less productive actually because you're just, you just have to do that and you think that you have to do that, but no, like you can approach it in a different way and try to, you know, either take a break and come back to it later or just go do something else and, the solution might come to you naturally.
Definitely. That's a great thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, speaking of that, like, when you're out, let's say you're on your bike or getting outside, have you ever come to, and something I'm noticing myself maybe doing more often, so why I'm just asking if others are, is actually leveraging AI, just sort of talking back and forth with it to help process, not necessarily to like do major research or more things, but sort of helping it in your thought process perspective. And if so, tell me more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's kind of 50-50 because a lot of times I don't want my phone with me. I don't want any type of technology. I just want to be out in nature. But the times, if I go walk the dog, for example, I have my phone and I can just, you know, just do talk to text into ChatGPT or some other cloud project. And the cool thing about AI is that, you don't have to have something super concise, and it's actually the opposite. The more context it has, the better it is. So even if I'm rambling about something, I just put it in there and then ask it to recap or, organize my thoughts. If I'm thinking about something, but I can't quite, get my thoughts organized, I would do that. And even for this podcast, you're like, don't prepare anything. It's going to just be a conversation. But I was like, I still need to prepare something because I like to prep. I can't just shoot from the hip. And so I started like throwing thoughts at it, and I used ChatGPT, and I said, okay, I'm going to throw a whole bunch of thoughts at you, and then don't recap anything. Just take it in. And then at the end of the week, just spit it back to me in an organized way. And that's, kind of what I did. And
So
I
you
just,
kind of like journaled about it, perhaps.
I
Is that what you
journaled,
did? Is you,
throughout
yeah.
the week. And I was like, oh, this would be cool to talk about. And then, oh, cool. And then just, kind of throw it at it, and kind of, I had a nice recap at the end of it of, everything I thought through during the week. Is also, if I don't write it down anyway, I might forget about it too. So,
Well, is there something that you had been thinking about earlier this week that you want to talk on that's on your mind?
um, I think, like, I know we touched on localization a little bit earlier, and there's a book that I love. It's called The Culture Map, that by Aaron Meyer, and it's fascinating. It explains how, different cultures work. And, I when when you tie that into product, it really makes sense. And I love that book. I read it 3 times, I think. And it talks about things like, some cultures are low context. Like in America, American cultures is typically low context because, historically, it was built on immigration and people didn't have the same, references and everything. So we tend to explain a lot more. And in France, for example, everyone kind of has the same, background historically. So we call that high context. And it's kind of like, my partner says, "Oh, you think I'm in your head and I understand what you're thinking." And that's kind of like what a high context culture is. It's like people don't necessarily need to talk. They understand they're on kind of on the same on the same line there. And when you do the parallel with product, I think is very interesting when it comes to localizing products, because in America, for example, you might want something, you know, product walkthrough or in product messaging, that kind of thing, where you run through the different steps and you explain exactly, you're like, okay, this is how you use the product. In other countries, you might not want to do that. You might just want to reflect that through design, or, have some different ways to approach it. And so when I think about, when you come in from the cultural angle, like in your approach product, it's really interesting to think about how to, you know, reflect and build products that are for different audiences, like international audiences.
So do you have any advice on that? Like when you're thinking about that with those different audiences, how you approach that and how you know, build more successful cross culture products?
So I think I don't have any specific example, but I mean, hypothetically, like people have different mental models. For example, like if I don't know, I have like a modal to build, and there's a blue button and a red button. The red button is for closing or for alerts. Like in a default culture, we might not have that same mental model. Like maybe the red button is on the left as opposed to the right, like depending on how people work and how what they're used to. And I think that kind of detail, I would say, is really important because that's what creates the seamless, um, you know, user journey or user interaction. So, especially when it comes to design interaction, is really interesting. But more recently, like I know I talked about us being in the process of localizing certain pieces of state data, and my team was thinking, oh, maybe we just localize some of this data, and it's our product is a lot of grid work because companies have a lot of assets and then they track the data associated with those assets. They're like, maybe we'll just translate the labels and the data itself. But then I was like, but the rest of the product is not localized. So you're going to create an experience that's half translated. And they're like, oh, we did not think about that. And I think that's where, coming from a non-English speaking country, like I'm very aware of that. And it's also something that very irks me. And if I'm using a product that's, badly localized, I'm going to, point it out because it's something that has my attention.
Yeah. We do that here in America too. It's just from a different perspective. Like when we pick something that came from another country and all the packaging is in a different language, we're like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
But I might be choosing it based off of color or where it's placed in the store
Mhm.
and things of that nature, and it may not give us the same experience because we've had that happen, so silly Americans. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love thinking about a book reference to this too. I'm a big reader, so, I'm adding another thing to my list, and the stack is getting quite tall.
Okay.
Are you
Yeah,
ready for
probably more on read books than read, right? It's always like this
uh
big old list of things.
It's getting there. I'm actually we had book club last week and with the product coffee community, and I was like, I think I can finish this book early because as a facilitator, I try to be in front of at least the conversation so that I can help. But it definitely the summertime, I feel like I'm always perpetually under 3 or 4 books at the same time. So I totally get that. All right,
We should probably move on to the fat rapid fire questions. I know it's Friday
yeah.
afternoon for those that are, so we want to make sure to hit you up with a few questions. These are fun. There's no right answer. So the first question is, what's a belief about product management that you held strongly 5 years ago that you have since abandoned?
That's a great question. I think so. When I got into product, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I had the imposter syndrome and was like, okay, am I qualified for this? Like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And I think I learned that, you don't have to be the subject matter expert on the product on everything. You just have to be the best learner. You just have to be the one who asks the best questions or just the questions at all. Um, and so even in the role that I'm in today, like I started in February, so it's still fairly recent. And there's another product manager that works at the company, and he does a lot of what I consider, product operations, and also, he's kind of like our platform PM. And he's been with the company for 20 years, and he knows everything inside and out. And at first I was like, okay, I need to, learn fast, and I can only hope I'd be at his level one day. And then my manager was like, no, like, that's not why we hired you. You need to, you're bridging the gap between him and our leadership team. Like, you're the business person. You don't need to know every detail about the product. You just need to make sure that, we have a product roadmap that makes sense, all of these other product management things that we don't do today. And then I kind of, found my place within the team. So yeah, I think just be the best and learner in the room. You don't need to be the domain expert.
I like it, being the best learner in the room. I like.
Yeah, we're here for that.
What's the question you ask yourself when you feel stuck on a product?
Um, I think I ask myself, how would the customer feel about this? Like, is this even important to the customer? For example, a lot of times we get caught up on the UI piece for our product, and the UI is not, it's good, it does the job, but it's not the best. It's not a slick UI experience like all of these, SaaS companies. And a lot of times I'm like, okay, we need to improve the UI and make it better. And it turns out that a lot of our customers, they don't use our UI at all because they just they grab the data because our data collection is very good, and they ship it to their SIEM system or to their ticketing system, and they look at it in things like Splunk, for example. Um, so they don't, it doesn't matter as much to them. And whenever I'm stuck on something, I always try to, you know, either email one of our customers or ask for a call, because the really cool thing about this job is that we are really close to our customers. We have a user group that is led by our customers, so we have a really good like voice of the customer, and they're just one call away pretty much. So
That's really fantastic that you have access like that. And I like the call out there that, you know, how I almost wanted to summarize it up with the who cares, but like who is going to care about what you're
mhm,
doing that
yeah,
needs to, right? And maybe it's not the interface. The interface doesn't matter because nobody's using the interface. They're using the data itself. And so that the data itself is working functionally is the problem that you want to get around rather than where the button is or, which screen it's on that they need to click or jump through on an experience. That's a great call out.
yeah.
All right. One more, and then I think we'll land the plane. Most useful piece of feedback you've ever received and who delivered it?
Um, that's another really good question. Well, piece of feedback about feedback. Okay. I'm trying to
Okay. Okay. Here we
confuse
go.
you. So when I worked at DoorDash, one of my managers, I could not get along with her, and I don't know, her way of working just didn't work for me. And someone told me, so this manager would give me a bunch of feedback, and I was like, really, like it's not right, like it's not relevant. And someone told me, feedback, it's not because someone gives you feedback that you have to accept it and act on it. It's kind of like not every customer feedback about the product, you don't have to take that feedback and implement it right away, right? It has to go
Hmm.
into your product brain and feed that little product box of yours, and then might come out as a totally different feature. It's not because they're asking for a feature that you have to build that feature exactly. You have to understand what their problem is. That's the same thing about feedback for me, and that helped me kind of put distance in it, between it, because the person giving feedback, is one person amongst others. And depending on the relationship you have with that person, if you really value, if you look up to that person, you can either take that feedback at heart and be like, okay, this is a really good piece of feedback, and because that person has authority in my life, or I look up to that person, I'm going to try and implement it. But if it's someone that you're like, yeah, no, I don't think you have the expertise, I don't think you know, you would be able to give me good feedback. And
Hmm.
I'm you can just be grateful and say thank you for the feedback, and doesn't mean that you have to implement it. So that was really
Hmm.
helpful for me when it comes to, resolving conflicts and things, other things that we also have to deal with as a PM.
Yep. There's no shortage of interesting things that we have to navigate and
Mhm.
find creative ways to say no or not right now or those types of things. All right, I'm gonna lie. I'm gonna give you one more question because it's Friday.
All right.
What's one thing you're looking forward to this weekend?
Well, riding my bike is it's kind of every weekend, so I look forward to that. But lately
Okay.
we've been paddleboarding a lot, and Lake Anne is 5 minutes away from us. So I just look forward to throwing the paddle in the car and go on the lake. It's a really good place for me. We get to relax. So we take the dog, and Kelly and I get on the paddles, the paddle for two people. It's really cool. And then we just stay out there for 2 hours. We do open water swim, and we kind of relax from all the stress from the week. It's yeah, just I think
Fantastic.
being outside in
Nice.
general.
Perfect summer activity.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fantastic.
yeah,
We have a bit of humidity here this weekend, so I don't know if there'll be lake or well, we have river time, but yeah, that sounds like just the right thing to be doing this weekend.
yes.
This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Marianne. It's been lovely learning about your own product experience, how you found camp, and how you're thinking of a product. I think it's great to hear how other folks are experiencing product, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you both for having me. It was really exciting to
Yeah,
be on your podcast.
awesome, cool.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
And
That's it for this episode of Product Camp Conversations. If something here sparked an idea or a potential guest, or you want to push back on something, we'd love to hear from you. Reach us at productcampconversations@gmail.com. And if you know a product person who'd get something out of this, send it their way. Have a great day wherever you are. We'll catch you next time on PCC.
Everybody talk PCCC. Posters on the wall, big